is a new era of Pigskin Frenzy, ladies and gentlemen. Full-time college football show. Pigskin Frenzy is now 100% all college football in podcast form. Yeah, I'll still talk about NFL content on X and on X at least. But when it comes to Instagram, Reels, content, podcast form, this is a college football show now, and I cannot wait for the future of Pigskin Frenzy to just blossom, and I cannot wait. And with that new era comes challenges and obstacles, and we are now on a collision course in the sport of college football. What the heck is happening with the greatest sport on earth? And that is what we're going to talk about. Today, we were going to talk about a full-on transfer portal, episode, and we're going to talk about the transfer portal. We're going to discuss, this is still a transfer portal episode. I'm not changing all of that. We're going to talk about the teams, the surprise teams, who did well, but we're also going to discuss a little bit about the college football playoff, and we need to discuss it because news broke, Sunday, and we're going to talk about it, and we need to discuss it, what Ross Dellinger from Yahoo Sports said about this, because this could change the trajectory of college football. Guys, welcome to Pigskin Frenzy on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon. Thank you for joining us. I'm Joel Norris, and whether you're watching on YouTube, listening on Spotify, listening on Podbean or Apple, a big thank you for taking some time out of your Tuesday to just sit back, watch, and listen to some college football coverage presented by me. Now, if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, like each episode, leave comments down below. Spotify and Podbean and Apple, all you got to do is just share around with others and follow on there as well. X and Instagram, at Pigskin_Frenzy. Follow, like each episode, like each pages. I'm going to, bring my news and highlights to college football, trivia posts on Instagram stories, go and answer today's college football question, as well as all things up to date for Pigskin Frenzy. Guys, the website's www.pigskinfrenzy.weebly.com. There you will find all things up to date for Pigskin Frenzy, talking all things college football, Tuesdays and Thursdays. We're going to, there's a home and about me page. Learn more about me as your podcast host. There is a contact info. I'll answer it on air or off air if need be. There is a platforms page, affiliations page, and a store page. Affiliations and store coming soon. The platforms page, all the platforms I just mentioned, to go and click on that page to see which one's your favorite listening style of the show. Pigskin Frenzy, college football show on www.pigskinfrenzy.weebly.com. All things up to date coming soon with the website. Let's start today off with a doozy, because it was a doozy. And Ross Dellinger broke the news Sunday. And you see how I'm just diving into it, because it's important, and it's important, and we need to discuss it. The college football playoff expansion, and you're thinking, oh Lord, here we go again. Oh, trust me, I said the same thing, and it's gonna get a little bit worse than that, ladies and gentlemen, because it is on like Donkey Kong. The college football playoff expansion, and this was reported by Ross Dellinger, senior college football reporter, Ross Dellinger of Yahoo Sports, formerly of Sports Illustrated. All credit goes to him for this. The SEC and Big Ten are now building momentum to further expand college football playoff to 14 or 16 teams. 14 or 16 teams. We already have 12. The 2024 season was the first incarnation of the 12-team playoff, and we're going to discuss what this means right now. According to it, they already have sole majority. Big Ten and SEC already have sole majority heading into 2026 for the 2026 college football season and college football playoff season. But with this can exercise that control, and this is a memorandum for the 10 FBS leagues and Notre Dame, handing control over to college football's two richest conferences. So they're understanding this last spring, because this was last spring. This is per quote. What I just read was per quote from Ross Dellinger. All credit goes to him. This is my own thoughts now. This was signed last spring. This was talked about. And I read it, but I kind of ignored it, because I was like, okay, well, I don't know what that really means, so I'm just going to brush it off. Well, silly me, Joel, silly me. Last spring, 2024 of spring, they really agreed on handing control to the college football playoff to the SEC and Big Ten. They get majority in over a lot of conferences when it comes to 14 to 16 if they expand it. Both conferences are working on expansion as we speak. They are meeting February 25th, which is look at that. on a Tuesday. So the next few weeks after we go over our frenzy games of the 2024 season, we'll discuss this and we'll convene back, audience, and talk about our thoughts on the meeting, because this is important that we need to talk about it. They're meeting on the 25th in New Orleans to get everything settled and done, to decide and present ideas on what the playoff can look like in the future. To me, this is not just about control of the playoff. This is control of college football. Okay? And I'm telling you this. This sounds like a plot of a super villain or arc. And I'm not joking on this. I'm slamming my microphone now. I'm telling you what I know. This is a plot of a supervillain arc. I kind of had a feeling in my stomach, in my gut, that this is where college football was headed. That this is where everything was headed when it comes to college football. I chose to ignore it. And I chose to ignore it because I did not want to see it and did not want to think about the sport, which I dubbed the greatest sport on earth, being led into this path and down this path. Well, you can't ignore it anymore, and I cannot ignore it anymore. This is going down a path that is going to be too deep and complicated for most. This is a villain arc, where the beloved conferences of the SEC and Big Ten, where everybody rooted for these conferences and dubbed them as the big powerhouses and heroes of college football, they are now slowly turning into the villain of college football. And it's literally like the Dark Knight. You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. And the SEC and the Big Ten are starting to become the supervillains of college football. They get control. And not only that, with control of the college football playoff, with media deals and money, they get more revenue than anybody else. They get majority vote than anybody else. So they get access and rights to media deals for the playoff more than anybody else. To me, this is. Do you not think that this is a supervillain arc? This sounds like a plot of a villain, of a supervillain in a superhero movie. I will take control of this, and not only will you take control of the playoff, what you're pretty much doing now at this point is taking control of college football. Now, look. They have already had control of college football. Let's be honest. They've already had pretty much control of college football with talent, national championships, and power and money and revenue when it comes to NIL and the portal and everything. They have had majority of it because a lot of talent goes there, and a lot of the revenue and a lot of the popularity and increased viewership and fandom goes towards the SEC and Big Ten. Don't get me wrong. A lot of the high-end money deals, all Big Ten and SEC, right? I understand that. But now they get to decide. It's starting to bleed into the playoff when it comes to deciding on games. What about, in the word, this is what J.D. Pickle said. J.D. McPickle said this from On3, and J.D., shout out to him with On3 and what he has done there. He's doing a heck of a job there. He said this, and I saw it on X. He said, what about the little guy? What about the little guy? SpongeBob said it best. I'm the little guy, and they're letting us go today. And I know that's a cartoon, but here's the deal. They are letting they're letting everybody go. What about the Big 12? What about the ACC? Where does this come into play? What about the Group of Five? Where does things stand with them? Because we're talking about pushing for inclusion. It sounds like this was all a front to gain control and a smokescreen to gain more control and power of the playoff in college football itself. And this is what it's turning into. And this is what my thoughts on it are. I think that college football, and this is interesting and funny enough that we're starting a full-on college football show with Pigskin Frenzy now, and we're talking about this. College football is turning into a freaking super league, okay? And you get the Big Ten and you get the SEC. The Big 12 and the ACC are schools in those two conferences in the Group of Five are going to have to either A, level up and join those conferences to create the to balance the Super League out, or get stepped on. And I don't like that feeling. I don't like where this is headed, and I'm scared about the sport dying off. And you're going to think, oh, it's going to create money. It's going to create media deals and money. And that's what everybody wants. Everybody in the SEC, Big Ten, and the conferences, they all want money. But here's what the audience wants, the viewers want. We don't want semi-pro football. We want it how it was. We want it to be fair, competitive among all conferences, not just the SEC and the Big Ten, but amongst the Big 12, amongst the ACC, the Group of Five. We want that competition, and we want that diversity among teams and acquisitions because it makes the sport fun, and it makes the sport really worth watching when it comes to everything. If you make it like it's the NFC and the AFC and the NFL, then how are we going to enjoy the sport of college football? We might as well just become fans of NFL, right? So I think that what we need to do is kind of get a hold of this thing and and I'm not trying to say stop the SEC and stop the Big Ten, because I am all for the SEC and Big Ten. They're the top dogs of college football. But I think there comes a time when there's a little much, right? When stuff happens and it's okay, this is a little much. And I think we're getting to that point now. And hopefully in the meeting, somebody says this and shuts some ideas down, because I really think right now 12 is good. And I think where we're at right now should stay just for a little bit. Just for a little bit. I get the pros and the opportunities when it comes to media deals and money and expansion and all that stuff. But when it comes to equality and diversion amongst conferences and everything, then good. I think that's what we should have. And by the way, if you want to expand, how about we expand scheduling and expand, everything amongst the powerhouses, right? If you want to be a powerhouse so bad, you need to play tougher competition. And I'm talking about hard from the get-go. Like number 1, Ohio State, they play Alabama week 1. Number 2, in week 2, Ohio State, they got to turn around and play Georgia. Number 3, you know what I'm saying? If it's getting to that point, we play hard competition. We play hard ball from the get-go. I think that is where, if you want to head that direction, you need to fix scheduling on top of that. So I think that's a good way of putting it also. The last thing I'll touch on it before we go to the transfer portal, because we need to talk about that. The last thing I'll touch on is this, is that diversion, everything's good with it. Toughness, equality, all that stuff is good with it. I just think that we need to stay where we're at for a few years and just need to slow down on it. That's where I think we need to do. I think that we need to slow down. I think that we need to hold off on it for as long as we can and shut down the ideas down. Look, I am for scheduling. I'm for conferences. I'm for all of it, but I just think what we need to do is bring college football back. College football needs a hero. And I'm going to be real. College football needs a hero. College football needs a committee. And I've said that from the jump. I said that a few weeks back. Go back and listen to my previous episodes. I said that from the jump, that college football needs a committee. I've already said that Nick Saban would be the best fit to be the commissioner of college football. It is too big for the NCAA to handle. And I think that college football needs a hero, and that hero is a committee. College football can branch off onto its own sport. It doesn't need the NCAA anymore because it's gotten too big for its own good. Branch off from the NCAA, create its own rules and its own sport without the NCAA and body of government. If you go to Washington with that, with NIL packages and transfers and all that stuff, branch off and sign orders on it and everything. Branch off. Whatever you need to do executive-wise and government body-wise, sign off on it and branch off from it. Then after that, establish a committee, like a Jedi council of sorts even, and put Nick Saban as the commissioner, as the head of that committee, because it will work, and it will make college football back to how it kind of sort of was, just a tad, and it will regulate all the wrongs and all the freedom that a lot of people control. I don't think it needs to be controlled by conferences. If college football is controlled by the SEC and Big Ten, it's not going to be good, because the majority is going to go to them. We need a fair, balanced way of control of college football, and it needs to be controlled by a committee, I think, headed by Nick Saban. If Nick Saban doesn't want to do it, I'll quote James Franklin. I think Chris Peterson's is a good way of doing it. He's got an excellent mind of college football and an excellent mind of the sport. He could be the commissioner of college football. He'll get my vote as well. Somebody needs to be the hero of college football. I think a committee can do that, and we need a hero. We need a hero. Because if we don't get a hero of college football, it's going to get worse and worse and worse when it comes to control, money, and power. And that's all the sport is going to become. And it's not going to be fun for anybody else involved. That's my point with it. So that's what that's my last thing to add on that. We will see what happens when it comes to everything coming up on February 25th in New Orleans when they all have that meeting with the playoff expansion and talks there. That was the first 15 minutes of the show. Let's talk and end the last 15 minutes of everything and talk about the rest of the show with the transfer portal, because I know we're going to talk about that. I apologize once again. 4,500 plus listeners, about to be at 4,600 listeners. Big thank you for taking time to listen to college football and these in each and every episode on each and every Tuesday and Thursday, and taking some time to listen on YouTube and watch on YouTube and listen on all audio platforms and gaining new listeners each and every day. Thank you so much for supporting Pigskin Frenzy, guys. And we're going to get down to the transfer portal, and I promised you guys a show on the transfer portal, and we're going to discuss it right now. The transfer portal is the black hole. You've already know about that, and we've already talked about that. We've already explained it. And we're going to touch on this year's class and this year's rankings. The spring window has not opened up yet. We will get to that probably around April. I think it comes out in around a couple of months. So in a couple of months, we'll get into that. But right now, the transfer rankings for the 2025 season is up in full gear, and a lot of teams are active in the portal. And we're going to discuss the top 10 rankings, the teams that finished strong, and the teams that were surprising in the portal, and the teams that probably needed to utilize the portal the most going into the 2025 season. The transfer portal is no secret to building rosters, and it's the fastest way to building rosters. You already know that. I've already talked about it. So we're going to discuss it here right now. So let's talk about the top 10 rankings in the portal and discuss who is in the top 10. You're going to be surprised because it is different from high school recruiting, ladies and gentlemen. Number one in the transfer portal is LSU. LSU is dominating the portal. Brian Kelly said after losing 4 games and after a not-so-good end to the 2024 campaign, he said, we are going to build a roster worth winning a championship, and he quote-unquote said, we will see you in the national championship in 2025. So he has promised a national championship. Can he keep that promise? Well, who knows? But the talent is adding up. He did well in high school recruiting, but he's done better in transfer recruiting. Number one, he's got guys like Patrick Payton coming in from Florida State. Guys like Mansour Delane coming in from Va Tech, the best of the best when it comes to edge rushing and cornerback and defensive backs, respectfully. He, along with a DJ Pickett from high school, Mansour Delane could mentor him as a veteran leader on that defensive back and on that end. He's got Michael Van Buren as backup quarterback from Mississippi State coming in to back up Garrett Nussmeier because Nussmeier is returning. He's got receiving help like Nick Anderson from Oklahoma, a huge acquisition there. He's got Barry Brown from Kentucky, a dynamic Debo Samuel type player in the receiving end, along with Aaron Anderson and Xavier Thomas coming back. Did they lose C.J. Daniels? Yes, but they gained when it came to receiving prospects. They got guys like Josh Thompson in the O-line coming in, replacing guys like Will Campbell and Emory Jones. They got offensive line help, defensive line help. They got a lot of guys from the portal and a lot of talent coming in, committing to LSU. They are building that roster like Ohio State did last year when Michigan was winning a national championship in the 2023 season. Now Ohio State has won its national championship in 2024 based off of returning players. LSU has returning players like Harold Perkins, Whit Weeks, Garrett Nussmeier, and Aaron Anderson, and a lot of guys, right? Number two, Ohio State utilized the portal and NIL packages along with solid high school recruiting. LSU's doing that. They're the number one transfer recruiting class, finished better than Ohio State did in rankings from last year. And they have a top 10 recruiting class on top of that. So LSU's got the ingredients to do well this season. But can they utilize that? can they utilize that in terms of coaching? Brian Kelly is the only answer to that, to that question. Can they turn this into a championship playoff caliber team for the 2025 season? Brian Kelly is the answer to that question, and he has to answer that question by coaching and out-coaching teams this year. The talent that they have, there's no way they should not make the playoffs. I'm going to be real. LSU's a playoff team, talent-wise. Can they utilize it with coaching? I've said it again. They need to outcoach, and this is a make-it-or-break-it year for Brian Kelly. If they don't get to the playoffs with this year and they lose 4 or 5 games this season, it's not looking good for the future of LSU, in my opinion. That's number one. Number two, in the transfer portal rankings, it's Ole Miss. Of course, Lane Kiffin is usually the portal king, and he is adding talent to build around quarterback Austin Simmons in this area. So you got Jordan Simmons coming in from Akron to Ole Miss. You got guys like Percy Lewis coming in from Auburn to Ole Miss to help block for Austin Simmons at quarterback. Guys like Traylon Ray from West Virginia going to Ole Miss, replacing guys like Trey Harris and Jordan Watkins, and just replacing guys. You got Deuce Alexander from Wake Forest going to Ole Miss. Kwan Lacey going from Missouri to Ole Miss. And on the defensive side, replacing a lot of guys in the secondary, you got Sage Ryan from LSU going to Ole Miss. You got Jaden Yates from Marshall going to Ole Miss. There's a bunch of guys. Antonio Kite from Auburn going to Ole Miss. A bunch of guys to add, right? To just add to the list, right, of guys to help out Ole Miss coming up in the 2025 season. Can it translate to another great season? We'll find out there. Surprisingly, at number 3 is Texas Tech. And Texas Tech is doing really, really well. And the guys at Lubbock are thinking, what are they going to do in the Big 12? Well, with this class, Texas Tech has got a shot to do really, really good under head coach Joey McGuire. Let me pull up what Joey McGuire and company are doing in the portal. They utilized edge rusher Romello Height from Georgia Tech, going to Texas Tech. Defensive line Lee Hunter going from UCF to the Texas Red Raiders, going to the transfer portal, going to Lubbock. Skylar Gill Howard going from NIU to Texas Tech. They are building that defense and building that defensive line, which is the problem for them last year, but it's not going to be a problem for them this year. Texas Tech is building guys. Offensive tackles, they have Howard Sampson going from North Carolina to Texas Tech. They have guys, guys like Hunter Zambrano coming in from Texas Tech, and they got a lot of guys coming in. They're at number 3. They're surprising me. Really, they are. And it's honestly, they're doing really, really good in the portal. They've done really, really well in the portal. Let's see how it translates to the 2025 season. So I'm kind of curious to see how that works. Number 4 is Oregon. Obviously, Dan Lanning doing excellent work. Going into the 2025 season, a top 5 recruiting class, top 5 transfer portal class. Dan Lanning, no shy of putting up and doing recruiting ball there. The biggest one there, the 2 biggest there are Mekhi Hughes coming from Tulane to Oregon. That is probably the biggest pickup for me out of the whole transfer portal. You guys don't realize what Oregon just did. They got a solid running back from the portal and a guy that could pop off at Oregon. You saw what he did at Tulane in the American Conference. Watch what he does at the Big Ten. He is going to pop off on the Big Ten. Watch out for Mekhi Hughes in a Ducks uniform coming up in 2025. Malik Benson with Dante Moore pairing him up from Florida State going to Oregon. Dante Moore is going to be most likely the starting quarterback for Oregon. And what they did is added some help for him and a veteran receiver in Malik Benson, and that could pave the way for him there. They got Jamari Johnson, tight end from Louisville, added him there. They got Isaiah World from Nevada to Oregon, a solid offensive tackle there, 5-star offensive tackle to the portal, helping out Dante Moore and bolstering up that offensive line for the Ducks. The Ducks are just going to be stacked and loaded. They really, really know how to build and reload for years to come. And as long as Dan Lanning's there, it's not going to change. So 2025, watch out for Oregon, basically based off the transfer portal. They're going to be good. Number 5, Miami. And it all starts with Georgia transfer quarterback Carson Beck. He has foregone the draft. He wasn't going to go to the draft. And he is now committed and transferred over to Miami. So he is now an ACC quarterback. Carson Beck really did not have a lot of the loaded receivers that he will have at Miami. So Carson Beck replacing Cam Ward is a good option for the Hurricanes and Mario Cristobal in this one. His girlfriend's there, so that's really, really good. So he's got a Miami basketball player that he's dating. You already know who it is. And for some of you at least. And he's got help at receiver there. So it's a win-win for Carson Beck. And he rebounds from a not so solid season, right? So Carson Beck going to Miami, upping his draft stock for 2026, and it helps him out a lot. You got Alex Bauman from Tulane going from there to Miami. It helped. He gets a tight end there, an interior lineman. He's got James Brockemeyer from TCU going from there to Miami. Charles Brantley at the defensive side of things going from Michigan State to Miami. Xavier Lucas going from Wisconsin to Miami. Jack Nickel, another tight end from UAB to Miami. The defense is really just coming up and they unglued for Miami. They're really, really bolstering that defense because that defense did have a lot of issues last season. They got Zachariah Poisner from Jacksonville State, David Blade, defensive line from Louisiana Tech to bolster that defensive line. They got another defensive back in Emmanuel Carnley from Arizona to Miami, Ethan O'Connor from Washington State going from Miami, bolstering that defense, and the U is on track to be a solid defensive team coming into this season. And with some more weapons that Carson Beck has got, Miami could be a problem next year in the ACC. So Miami at number 5. Number 6, and this is a surprise team. We're going to talk about surprise teams in a minute, is Missouri. Missouri at number 6. They are doing quite well in the portal. I see what you're doing, Eli Drinkwitz, doing really, really well in the portal. Let's talk about this, especially on defensive side of things. Damon Wilson, the junior, Georgia to Mizzou is a big pickup from them. They have Jalen Catalan from UNLV to Missouri, Stephen Hall, Washington State to Missouri, Johnny Williams on the offensive side of things are really, really good from West Virginia to Missouri, Keegan Tross from Wake Forest to Missouri, and bolstering up that O-line and bolstering up everything at the receiving end. Excuse me. Can only mean one thing. They needed a quarterback to replace Brady Cook, and they got that with Bo Pribula from Penn State. Bo Pribula from Penn State transferred to Mizzou. He most likely will win the starting job. Kevin Coleman, as a receiver, goes from Mississippi State to Missouri and bolstering up some help. You're bolstering up with a good quarterback that does run, but do not underestimate his throwing ability. He can throw a ball. You're helping him out with adding Kevin Coleman, a veteran receiver in there, a veteran O-line, and bolstering up that O-line depth. Mizzou can be back to where they were 2 years ago next season with that sort of help. So doing really, really good in the portal. Mizzou adding some big-time names on their team for 2025. Let's see if it translates with Eli Drinkwitz. Number 7 is Florida State. Surprisingly, didn't do so hot in recruiting, and they didn't have a good year last year at all, but they're picking up some players in the transfer portal under Gus Malzahn, Mike Norvell as head coach. Let's talk about what they're doing. They bolstered up that defense a lot. They got Demonte Diggs from Coastal Carolina. They have Caleb LaValle from North Carolina at linebacker. They got Jason Jenkins going from Tennessee to Florida State. They got Elijah Herring going at linebacker, going from Memphis to Florida State. They have, as I look at the bolstering of their defense, Deontay McCray going from Western Kentucky to Florida State. But how about their O-line? Their O-line struggled a lot as well. Gunnar Hansen from Vanderbilt going to Florida State. They have Micah Pettis from Ole Miss going to Florida State. Adrian Medley going from UCF to Florida State. Luke Pettibon going from Wake Forest to Florida State. I'm looking out the list now. They got, they have a lot of guys as well going from the O-line. Let me look. As far as I know, That was all from their portal so far. Got a lot of guys on defense. They also signed another quarterback in the portal to help out. They got Squirrel White from Tennessee going to Florida State in the portal. They also have Thomas Castellanos at quarterback going from Boston College to the transfer portal. So let's see how Florida State does and how Castellanos operates with the weapons around him. He's got some help on defense to get them off the field. He's got some to balance everything out, and he's got some weapons on the field that like Squirrel White to help him out. Will Florida State be a contender again? Who knows? Could they be a lot better than they were? Let's see. Let's see how Castellanos operates under Gus Malzahn's offense and under Mike Norvell at Florida State. So that's an interesting ranking there. Let's see how Florida State translates this in to the 2025 season. Number 8 is Auburn. Auburn doing great in the portal. They did well in high school recruiting. In the portal, they're doing well as well. They landed Jackson Arnold at quarterback. They needed a quarterback, and that was one of the issues they addressed, and they got him. Jackson Arnold from Oklahoma transferring in to Auburn, but they also helped him out as well with Darrell Robinson going from Kentucky to Auburn. They had they bolster up the O-line with Mason Murphy going from USC to Auburn. They got guys like Xavier Chaplin going from Va Tech to Auburn. They got Eric Singleton Jr. at wide receiver from Georgia Tech going to Auburn. So some big-time pickups there to help Jackson Arnold out at the quarterback spot. Or Deuce Knight, if Deuce Knight is going to be the future starter heading into 2025, or is he a bridge quarterback for them? On defense, and they also got Ashton Daniels in the transfer portal to back up Jackson Arnold or Deuce Knight as well. So Ashton Daniels from Stanford going in there. Most likely Arnold will be the starting quarterback, but if they can turn to Ashton Daniels as well. Hugh Freeze is picking up some of his players. Harato Fields at Wake Forest coming into Auburn. He's landed some guys in there, guys. He's got Tanner Bailey coming in at quarterback as well from South Carolina. So he's got a quarterback room this year, and it could translate into wins heading into the 2025 season along with freshman quarterback Deuce Knight. So we got guys on defense as well for Auburn, edge rusher from Sam Houston, Chris Murray. You got guys like Xavier Atkins from LSU going to linebacker to Auburn. He's got cornerback and defensive back Ryan Strader from Maryland. He's got guys such as defensive lineman Dallas Walker IV from Western Kentucky, Tay Seymour from Georgia Tech going to Auburn. So they got a lot of players on defense, bolstering up that defense, bolstering up that O-line. It's going to be a good thing, and it could be a good thing for them. So let's watch out for them and watch out for what they do heading in to the 2025 season. Number 9 is Kentucky, another surprising team on my list, and I'm going to talk about surprising teams here in a little bit and teams that need to finish out strong before we conclude this episode of the College Football Tuesday edition of Pigskin Frenzy. Marquise Grace coming in at the edge spot. Wide receiver True Edwards from Louisiana Tech helping out that offense. David Gusta coming in from Washington State to Kentucky. Bolstering up that offensive line as well. Shai Zai Pete coming from New Mexico. Dante Dowdell from Nebraska coming in from Kentucky at running back. And then they got Henry Boyer from Illinois going to Kentucky. Evan Wibberly coming in from Western Kentucky to Kentucky. Alex Walsh-Challiger from Bowling Green coming in from Kentucky. You also got Kevis Thomas from Maryland to Kentucky at defensive line. Jade Williams from Wyoming to Kentucky. Cameron Aldis from Kent State to Kentucky. And on offense, to round everything out, you got Zach Calzada, graduate transfer Zach Calzada, who most likely will start, coming from Incarnate Word to Kentucky. And also some help with him is Dante Dowdell. Not only that, J.J. Hester from Oklahoma coming in for Kentucky as well. So Kentucky is making some big-time moves in the portal. They are number 9 on this list, surprisingly. And let's round out the top 10 rankings with Texas A&M. And Texas A&M is doing really, really well as well. I'm curious to see what the moves they are making there. They have, to start off, a quarterback that could challenge Marcel Reed at the quarterback position. They got Jacob Zenu from UAB going to Texas A&M. Zeno's a good thrower, and a veteran presence can help step up Marcel Reed and challenge him to be better. They got some receivers in the portal as well. Casey Concepcion from NC State to Texas A&M. Micah Hudson from Texas Tech to Texas A&M. Big-time playmaker receivers and some big-time. They needed some receivers from last year, and boy, did they get them from the portal. They bolstered up those receivers. Mario Craver from State to Texas A&M. Jonah Wilson from Houston to Texas A&M. A loaded receiver room now is happening in Aggie World in College Station for Mike Elko and company. So pay attention. This receiver room will probably be one of the best in the country. And I'm not joking. Heading into the 2025 season, they got some guys at receivers that it's pick your poison. You can't guard all of them, and Texas A&M on offense can be deadly with whoever they got at quarterback with a receiving room and a receiving core that A&M has heading into 2025 season. At the tight end position as well, they got Mike O'Reilly coming in from Auburn, which is a huge pickup at the tight end position. He can block, and he's a good playmaker as well, receiving. So watch out for the receivers and the tight ends at Texas A&M. They have bolstered up this offense. Mike Elko doing a heck of a job with his coaching staff there. And on defense, you got Jillian Humphrey at corner coming from Georgia, a big time pickup there. You got edge rusher from Colorado, Deion Haynes coming in there, and you got Sam Impemba from Georgia coming into Texas A&M at the edge spot. So the edge rushers, they needed some edge rushers, and they sure got them. So watch out for Texas A&M. They got a loaded, even though they're number 10, they're not like an LSU class or an Ole Miss class, but they got some guys that could really, really make a difference in the SEC and help bolster them in the SEC this year. So watch out for Texas A&M and what they do heading into the 2025 season. So that's the top 10 in the transfer portal class rankings. Let me give you my surprise teams and teams. First off, let me give you teams who finished strong, and then I'll give you my thoughts on that. Some surprise, and then some teams that really needed to finish strong, and then some surprise teams to head off and conclude this episode of Pigskin Frenzy. So the strong teams obviously are LSU. They really needed to finish strong, and they did finish strong. So LSU is a team that I look at that really benefited from the transfer portal. Obviously, they're number one. Now let's see if it translates into wins for the 2025 season. Ole Miss benefited off the transfer portal as well. You certainly always do. But that's a team right there that benefited from the portal as well. So I think Ole Miss is a team that benefited from the portal as well. If you want to talk about another team that benefited from the portal as well, I think Texas A&M did as well. I think Texas A&M needed some good receivers. They needed some edge rushers, and they certainly got them. This is a class, I think, a transfer window that I think that A&M benefited from the most, and I think that they could really, really do some damage this season heading into the 2025 year. I think that if you want to look at defensively, who finished strong? Miami finished strong, and I think Miami needed to bolster their defense after last year's fiasco with their defense. Getting Carson Beck is, to replace Cam Ward is a good acquisition. They do have the guys to help him out, and I think the offense, along with a defense, with a little bit of a better defense, Miami could control their own destiny in the ACC once again. So let's watch out for Miami, and let's see what they do heading into the 2025 season. But I think they finished strong as well. Last but not least, on finishing strong, Oregon. Oregon always finishes strong. They got some help for Dante Moore at the receiving spot, at the offensive line spot for sure. But and on defense, I think defensively they did good as well. I think the biggest pickup out of the whole transfer portal was Oregon with Micah Hughes. I think Mekhi Hughes. Mekhi Hughes doing really, really good with Tulane. He did some damage there. I think he's going to do some damage in the 2025 season for the Big Ten. And I think that college football and the Big Ten doesn't realize what Oregon did when picking up Mekhi Hughes. I hope they do not underestimate him. They need a game plan around him. He's going to be a star in the making in 2025. Just watch. So those are some of the teams that finished strong in the portal on my end. Let's talk about the teams that really needed to finish stronger. I think that, and I'm going to keep saying it until the cows come home, Oklahoma needed to finish stronger. I think 16 is good. They finished right outside of the top 15 or in the top 20. But John Mater is going to help them out a lot. I think picking up John Mater from Washington State was a good acquisition for them. Brent Venables is very pleased with that one. He just needs a little bit more help. A lot of his receivers have gone. They got young receivers, a lot of them coming back from injury, some veteran receivers coming back from injury, which is good. But they need some, especially in the spring window, to round out so the rankings will fluctuate. I think that they need to finish strong and get ready to finish strong, especially in the spring window, and help out John Mater in the spring window and get some guys at the receiving core to help him out as well on offense. And I think they just need to finish strong for their own sake. I think they need to finish strong for the 2025 season so it can help bolster them up and they can be better heading into the 2025 season and beyond, and it helps Brent Venables out as well. So I think they need to finish strong and could have finished stronger in the early window. I think if you want to look at everything, surprisingly, Alabama. I think Alabama could have finished a lot stronger than they did in the early window as well. They had the opportunity to either to get some more players than they really could. I know they got a whole lot of talent. I mean, look, they got a whole lot of talent now from high school recruiting and from previous recruiting classes for the transfers. But they got Isaiah Horton from Miami, which is a good pickup. Nikai Hill-Green from Colorado at linebacker. Cameron Calhoun from Utah. They got some good players coming in, but I think they could have had some more help in replacing a lot of the guys at O-line and a lot of the guys at running back. They lost Justice Haynes. I think that replacing him with Draylon Washington is not bad, but they could be better at the running back spot. They do, they do have some running backs in that class. They got Jam Miller coming back, which is good, but losing a Justice Haynes kind of does hurt them. Cam Dewberry from A&M and Arkle Anagwam coming in from Ball State. Those are some guys that are good, but they need more playing experience, and those aren't really, to me, they're good pickups, but not the best pickups. I think the best pickup that they had to me was Kelby Collins, defensive line from Florida. I think he will make a huge difference for that defensive line at Alabama. But overall, I don't really see anything that's eye-popping about this this transfer class for Alabama. And I think they could have done a lot better in the early window. I think they need to finish strong and need to finish a lot stronger heading in to the 2025 season in the spring window. I think if you want to talk about picking up recruits, I think in the transfer window, I'm surprised Michigan, and I think Michigan needs to finish stronger, especially with the recruiting class they built. They have done really well in high school recruiting. They've gotten one player that stands out to me, and that's Trey Williams, coming from Clemson on the defensive line spot, going from the Clemson to Michigan on the defensive line spot to bolster up that D-line, which is good. But Caleb Anderson's good from Louisiana. He just needs more playing time. I think also getting two players also from the transfer portal help. Trey Williams, Justice Haynes from Alabama going from there to Michigan is a big-time pickup, and Damon Payne going from Alabama to Michigan helps bolster their D-line as well. So 3 big acquisitions. I'm sorry, 4, really, if you count Troy Bowles from Georgia going from Michigan. Those are some 4 big acquisitions, but I think they need to finish up. And if they want to start Bryce Underwood off right, they need to bolster around the receiving core, not just the running back with Justice Haynes, and they need to help out him in the receiving area and pick up some receivers coming in to the spring window. I mean, Mikey Keene to help bolster him out behind, to give him some competition, some veteran competition for him so he can try to win the starting job for Bryce Underwood. But they need more receiving presence for either Mikey Keene or for Bryce Underwood, whoever starts. So I think Michigan needs to finish stronger than they have and need to finish stronger in the spring window as well. So I think Michigan is one. Let me give you one more who needs to finish strong before I conclude with surprising teams heading in to or who's surprising teams in the transfer portal who have done well in the transfer portal before we conclude today's episode of Pigskin Frenzy. So the last but not least, who I think could have finished a lot stronger in the portal, and they still got time to finish out stronger in the portal. And I think it's Ohio State. I think Ohio State, to me, their counterpart and their rival across the way. I think that, yes, CJ Donaldson from West Virginia is a good pickup. Philip Daniels from Minnesota is a good pickup. I think that, Ethan Anayawa from Rice and Max Clare from Purdue, going from those. Those are some good pickups. Howard is a one that really, honestly, is, kind of a question mark for me right now. They got a lot of guys who they are transferring out of Ohio State, and they're losing some guys, and they did really, really well in recruiting, but I think in the spring window, they need to get some more guys to leverage it out and to balance it out, especially since they're the defending national champions. I believe in Ohio State. They got a lot of talent heading into the 2025 season, so it won't hurt them too much. I'm just surprised that they are right now, in the top 35. I think they should be at least in the top 15 in transfers because of to play with some talent and try to make a repeat at running for a national championship in 2025. So those are the surprise teams who I think, or at least that I think they need to finish stronger, and who didn't finish quite as strong in the early window, in my opinion. I think they need to step it up a little bit more in the transfer portal. Last but not least, let me give you some teams that are finishing strong, or surprisingly strong, being as surprise teams in the transfer portal, and how it can translate to the 2025 season before we conclude today's episode of the show. Number one, Mississippi State. I said I was going to talk about this. I think Mississippi State finishing, right now in the transfer class, they were top 5. They dropped all the way down to, they dropped all the way down to 15. They're in the top 15 in transfers right now. I see what Jeff Lebby's doing. He's building down there. They got some good receivers. They lost Kevin Coleman, but they get Anthony Evans III from Georgia. They get Aiden Williams from Ole Miss. They get Cam Thompson from NIU. So they got some loaded receivers for Blake Shapen to take shape in the portal. They got Colby Keenum in the interior offensive line. They got Carson Lee in the interior offensive line. Some more wide receiver help. Brennan Thompson from OU going to Mississippi State. Marcus Allen coming in from State, and to bolster up, not really that, they could have a new starting quarterback if it's not Blake Shapen, in Luke Cronenhoek from Florida State. He played a little bit at Florida State last year, but not enough under DJ Uiagalelei and Brock Glenn. But Cronenhoek can be a starter for Mississippi State going into the 2025 season. He is a solid quarterback, and I see what he's done. He could be a solid acquisition for Mississippi State. So watch out for what State is doing. They are building something up there, y'all. They really are. And I think that it doesn't look like it from the ranking aspect of it, but they are getting some talent in there to come to Starkville. So State could do a lot better this year and surprise a lot of people's expectations in 2025. I could be wrong. So if you want to benchmark me and roast me after I say this, you can. But I think Mississippi State could be on the rise. So watch out for them heading into 2025. Their defense is bolstered as well. If you want to look at another surprise team, I think Arkansas is doing heck of a job as well, getting guys like Rahan Jones from going to Arkansas, Blake Ford as a kicker, Ismail Cease going from Stanford to Arkansas, Marcus Dummerville from Maryland to Arkansas, the O-line, bolstering up and helping Taylon Green out at quarterback. Arkansas is delivering some good players in this portal and some underrated players in this portal that a lot of people aren't thinking about. A.J. Green from Oklahoma State to Kentucky, Cam Shanks from UAB to Arkansas, Omega Blake from Charlotte to Arkansas. You got on the defensive side, you got Ken Talley from Michigan State, Connie Walker from Oklahoma. You got Jordan Young from Cincinnati to Arkansas, and a lot of guys helping out Taylon Green on the interior offensive linemen like Kavion Brossard from Ole Miss. A lot of talent coming in for the Razorbacks, so I'm surprised that they are doing that well in recruiting, especially with kind of the up and down, inconsistent season they had in the previous years. So watch out for Arkansas and what they could do to meet up expectations in 2025 as well. Sam Pittman is doing a heck of a job there as well, along with Bobby Petrino. So One more surprise team, and I can just tell you right now, this is my last surprise team before we conclude today's episode of Pigskin Frenzy. It's South Carolina again. Shane Beamer is doing something up there in South Carolina. He's doing really, really good. Not just he did really well in recruiting, but he's meeting expectations in transfer portal, in the portal rankings. 13, they are in the top 15. Getting to the point where they're right outside the top 10 in the transfer portal, helping Lenora Sellers out on the O-line with Arian Parks. Excuse me, those are outgoing transfers. They are really, I don't have the nose for the portal rankings. Oh, well, bringing back guys from the portal at least, like Miles Norwood, and bringing guys like Jordan Dingle coming back out of the portal and recruiting guys out of the portal and getting some guys from the portal as well at South Carolina. They got Aaron Nolan from the portal as well, backing up Lenora Sellers. So they got a good quarterback room. They have good playmakers coming back on the interior offensive line. They got some good talent coming in for the Gamecocks. So Columbia, South Carolina could be on an uproar with Shane Beamer and the job he's doing recruiting in the portal and recruiting in general. So watch out for South Carolina heading into the 2025. This could turn into where they could be a dark horse contender for the college football playoff in 2025. So I'm excited to see how they develop and grow. But they are doing quite well, and I'm surprised by it. So watch out for South Carolina and what they are doing. They could be on the rise, just, and underrated again heading into the 2025 season. That's the surprise teams for the transfer portal. This was the transfer portal episode. This was the expansion dogs episode as well. Guys, we are out of time. A big thank you for taking some time out of your Tuesday to just sit back, watch, and listen to some college football coverage presented by me. Now, if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, like each episode, leave comments down below. Spotify, Podbean, Apple, all you have to do is just share around with others and follow on there as well. X on Instagram at Pigskin_Frenzy. Follow like the pages there. You're going to get episode updates, news and highlights from across college and NFL football. Excuse me, I'm used to saying it. My apologies. Across college football. News and highlights, thoughts on X about NFL still, though. But there's Instagram stories for trivia questions. Go and answer today's trivia question on college football, as well as all things up to date for Pigskin Frenzy. Guys, the website's www.pigskinfrenzy.weebly.com. All things up to date for Pigskin Frenzy on that one. Guys, we are out of time. A big thank you for taking some time out of your Tuesday. Listen to some college football coverage presented by me. We'll be back Thursday with episode 200. Episode 200 of Pigskin Frenzy. Guys, a big thank you for tuning in. About to be at 4,600 listeners and to making it that far. And in making it with me that far, what a journey it has been doing a Pigskin. I could have not thanked all of you guys enough for tuning in and for the support listening to Pigskin Frenzy each and every Tuesday night and Tuesday afternoon and Wednesday and Thursday afternoon and Tuesdays and Thursdays every week on all platforms. Episode 200 is Thursday, and we got a special treat because we are starting our list series. Our first list series, Frenzy's top 50 college football games of the 2024 season. 50 through 41 is Thursday, and we will continue on until the March 6th episode of Pigskin Frenzy when we get down to the number one spot. 50 through 41, who is 50 through 41? Special treat of the special edition 200th episode of Pigskin Frenzy coming up Thursday. You're not going to want to miss it. And until Thursday, with the Frenzy games of top 50 of college football 2024 season, and until the 200th episode of Pigskin Frenzy on Thursday, I'm Joel Norris signing off. We will see you then. For everybody out there, please and always, we're praying for you all. We love you all. We couldn't do this without you guys. And big thank you for everybody tuning in and listening. We couldn't do this without the Lord Jesus Christ. If you want to talk about Jesus, comment me and talk to me and message me. We will gladly talk about Jesus with you if you want to come to know Jesus to be your Lord and Savior. We praying for you all. We love you all. We thank God every day for this platform, for He has given us to praise Him on this show and to give us this platform to exalt His name above our own. Because if we wouldn't have Pigskin Frenzy without Jesus. So thank you for that. Guys, for everybody out there, please and always stay the course.